Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas, and this is how to make a first-person shooter in Unity, and welcome to episode 22. So what we're going to do here is we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to change our visualization of our health into actual UI rather than just a number, and we're also going to look at a couple more things such as some environmental design. Because obviously in the game you don't just have one area, you're not restricted to one. You have different places that you can visit and different scenarios you can be in. So we're going to start looking at environments now, and we're going to build up from there. So firstly, what I want to do is, let's say when we press play and we have our health down as 10, well, we'll keep it as 10, but let's say when we get hit, the zombie starts taking 2 off us. This can also be a way that we can predetermine difficulty later on. So let's say at the moment we're building up a medium difficulty rather than an easy difficulty. So the zombie attack takes, let's say, 2 off us. So if we go into the zombie follow script, so if we double click here, open up in MonoDevelop or Visual Studio, let's change the actual damage number, which is down here, global health.player health minus equals 1. Let's change that to a 2 and save. So theoretically we could be hit 5 times before we die. So what we'll do now is we'll add in the visualization to the game. So game object, UI, and let's start with a raw image. And let's have this as just black. We'll have this as like a kind of a background base for the game itself. And let's anchor it at the top right. You can obviously anchor it wherever you want to. I'm using top right to make things nice and easy. So double click. Let's change everything around. So let's move our camera. And I'm going to make it kind of like a bar style. So I'm going to bring it to about there. And I'm going to expand it to about there and expand it inwards just a little. So obviously within here now we'll have a couple more objects which represent the health itself. So on the raw image here, let's right click, UI, and let's create another raw image. I'm doing this nice and quickly and easily and showing you ways you can do it. You can obviously take the time and use perhaps sprites or even various different imagery to do this. So I'm going to take this first one, shrink it just a little to about there, and bring it to the top, to there. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to rename the actual original black image, and I'll just call it health container. So this first raw image, the red one, let's call it health 04. Now even though it's going to be 5, I'm going to call it health 04 because we're going to go 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So 0 is technically going to be our first one. So we've got our first health bar. Easy way to do this is just add in another 4 of them. So hold control, press D. Let's drag it down to about there. And again, to about there. Now, as I always say, I'm doing this nice and quickly for convenience sake. Obviously, you guys can take as much time as you need. So I'm going to quickly rename these. So health 03, health 02, health 01, and health 00. So the way this is going to be controlled is going to be via a script, because there's no other real way that we can truly remove some health from ourselves. So we'll be doing it via a script. So right click, create, C# script, and let's call this health monitor. So within the script itself, what we're going to do is we're going to have the 5 game objects that we've just created, the red ones, to represent the health. So they're going to be 5 of the variables. And we're going to have another one which represents the current health. So let's get rid of the note above void update, and we don't need void start either. So our first variable, public game object, and let's call it health 04, semicolon. And I'm going to copy that line, do it 4 more times, and obviously change it to 3, 2, 1, 0. And then, as I say, the last one, it's going to be an integer called current health. So obviously what's going to happen here is I need to make the current health equal to whatever our health is in the global health script. So current health equals global health dot player health semicolon. So what we need to do now is when we lose some health, we need to actually make that health bar disappear, and rather than just make it disappear off the screen, I want to make it kind of transform itself to rotate, so it kind of looks like it's fading, or rather shrinking off where it should be. So we need to do an if statement. So if current health equals, and that's a double equals, 4 open curly bracket. So obviously we'll start at, actually no, we'd do this at 8, won't we, because it goes in increments of 2 if we remember. So our maximum health at the moment is 10. The zombie takes 1 off us, which means it's 8. So if it is 8, what we do is another if health 04 dot transform dot local scale, that's a capital S on the scale right there, dot y is less than or equal to 0.0 f, then we do the following. We're going to set it inactive. So health 04 dot set active in brackets false and a semicolon. And then we're going to close curly bracket there to close that if statement. But now we need an else statement, because if it isn't less than 0, then we need to kind of shrink it on its using a vector 3. So we can do else open curly bracket, and we'll do health 04 dot transform dot local scale minus equals new vector 3, and in brackets we'll do it on the x, which is going to be 0, so 0.0 f. We'll shrink it on the y, not too quickly but not too slowly, so we'll have roughly, I'm going to say 0.05. I think is going to be a nice figure to have there, but we can test it out in just a second anyway. F comma and 0.0 f, because we don't want to change it on the z. So close bracket, semicolon, close curly bracket, and save that script. Now we'll deal a little bit more in this in just a second, but what we realistically need to do right now is just test this first one works. Okay, so we have an error. Let's see what it's telling us. There we go. Not sure why that happened. It looked like it was a tab space. What's it saying? No, it's still an error. So let's see, why is this complaining? So we've closed that. Oh, of course, we actually need to close the class, don't we? Schoolboy error, guys, schoolboy error. But there is the class closed. So semicolon, close curly bracket. If you have any problems with the scripts though, as I always say, head over to the website, you can get them there. These actual scripts that now work, so this will working perfectly now, so this will be on the website for you to download if you have any problems. So what we need to do is we need to attach this health monitor to our global health object down here, straight onto there, and we just need to quickly define these variables. So there are a couple of ways that you could probably visualize health, but this is the quickest and easiest way I know. And as we get further into this development of a first-person shooter, I more than likely will base it off perhaps something like Battlefield or Call of Duty, so we won't theoretically have a visualization monitor like this. But if you want to keep it like this, please do so. So if we press play and test out the first one, now hopefully we should be able to see, as soon as we get hit, our first health bar does what it needs to do. There we go. So now obviously we would have our other health bars disappear. So to do that, excuse me, we just need to take this if statement all the way there and just replicate and change what we need to. So obviously the second health bar is when we have 6. So that's going to be, rather than health 4, it's going to be health 3. And then once again, that's then going to be 4. So then that's going to be 2, 2, 2. And then when our health hits 2, that's obviously going to be 1, 1, 1. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to put this in, although theoretically this isn't actually going to work. At a later point, what I intend to do is, rather than instantly go to the game over screen, I'm going to kind of let it sit for maybe a second or so to kind of fade to red and then go to the game over screen. So this is kind of a way of future-proofing what we're going to do. You'll see what I mean when I press play. So let's save that script there. Head back to Unity, press play. So we should be able to see our first 4 bars do what they need to do and disappear. And now we should see nothing. It instantly goes to the game over screen. And as I say, at that point, I want it later in development to kind of fade into a red scene to say game over. So we would actually see this final red bar disintegrate. So now we have that. Let's get rid of our original health display like that up there. Let's just untick. We'll keep it there active just in case we need to use it for anything else in the future. But as long as it's inactive, it's not going to make too much of a difference. So let's have a look at some terrain and development. Now, a terrain is something which is very versatile in Unity, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably already aware of how terrains work. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about how they work. If you want a bit more information on them, try the beginner series I have. We deal quite a bit with terrains in that, or even the RPG series if you want a bit more experience with terrains. So firstly, let's insert it. Game object, 3D object, terrain. Now the terrain is going to be huge in this case. So I'm going to, I'm going to double click on create 02, and I'm going to move the mouse over here so we can see the terrain at least half decent. So this is going to be the world which we kind of walk around in at this point. And what I think we're going to need to do is we need to kind of add in a directional light, give a bit more lighting now. So game object, light, and let's just have a directional light. It's been a bit dull lately, so let's have this in. I might change the colouring a little. Let's have it slightly orangey, dully, grey, yellowy. Yeah, we'll have it something like that. That looks pretty decent. Obviously, you guys do what you need to do. So let's get this terrain actually looking like something we could use. So let's go to our textures and let's bring in these 2 textures right here. As always, head over to the website, downloads and assets, the first person shooter section, and you can download them right there. So what I think we're going to do here is let's create the normal maps that we're going to need for these 2 textures. So we know how to do normal maps, don't we? Duplicate the texture, change it to normal map, and let's just apply as it is. Same with the rock texture. Hold Control, press D, change it to normal map, and apply. So the terrain, let's add the, what should we add? Let's have the dirt floor as the main terrain texture. So on the paint texture, edit texture, add, drag and drop the dirty floor there, and let's click on add. There we go. Now let's add another texture, add, let's have the rock texture in there, and add. And let's so I'll quickly go over a few things here. This first one is a way of raising and lowering the terrain, and obviously you have a few different brush styles you could use. So if we were to click on this brush style, let's change the brush size higher so we've got more of an area to cover, and the opacity obviously is how much or how little it's going to affect it when we change the terrain up or down. So a lower opacity means it doesn't raise that much. A higher opacity means it's going to raise much more. So if you want a rocky kind of terrain, it's best to choose maybe something like this, have high opacity, brush size, entirely up to you. This next one is a way of, how can I put it, having a certain height in the terrain itself. So if you want a constant height throughout the terrain, you can just use that. Obviously the brush size, opacity all applies the same here. Smooth height is a way of smoothing out what we have. So sometimes I'll use an example over here. If we have this here, and let's choose these here, and it looks quite jagged if we do that, we can always smooth out using this. So if we select this brush and go over, holding the mouse down, we can smooth it out quite nicely. So the smoothing tool is quite useful in many ways. Obviously, we've just added the texture, so that's the paint tool, nice and simple. Trees, paint details, we'll get to a little later on because we're going to add a little something to this. And then we've got the settings. Not too important with the settings, but one thing I will point out at this stage is the resolution, i.e. terrain width, length and height. You should really set these three figures what you would want to be later on in the game. If you start building your terrain as it is, and you start adding in this, that and the other, and then decide, terrain needs changing in size, if you alter it, it will take everything in comparison, so then it will look a bit strange when you expand the terrain. So I'm going to go back to the paint tool. I'm going to take the rock texture. I'm going to shrink the brush size. I'm just going to paint these here to look more like rocks. So nice and quickly. There we go. As I always say, you guys take as much time as you need. I kind of speed through some of these tutorials just to kind of get to the point of this is what we're doing. And sometimes it can look a little bit, well, I'm not happy with how it looks sometimes. But yeah, there we go. If you make mistakes, you can easily rectify them. So there we go. There's a way of painting our terrain. Now, let's bring in a tree. So let's go to our objects folder and let's bring in this tree 01, which you can get as well on the downloads and assets. Next, let's add in the tree as part of the terrain rather than an object. I'll explain what I mean now. So a tree itself, if we go in there, we actually have the tree there that we could drag and drop if we need to. But then that would mean adding a tree each time you would want one, here, here. Great thing about terrain is you can do that automatically. So if you click on the terrain, go to the place trees, little button there, edit trees, add tree, and then just drag and drop the tree onto the prefab and click add. And then, beauty of that is the brush size yet again. You can have tree density. Let's have that as 47. Tree height, we want it random because we want the trees different heights between these two markings here. So we can have it fairly high. So we can have it there. Color variation, I tend not to play around with too much, but if you have it high, you would see what I mean. 0.4, its default setting is quite decent. So let's decrease the brush size to about 15 and let's add a couple of trees. So here you can see the environment starting to take effect. And although it doesn't look absolutely fantastic, it's something that it's something to work away at. Take your time and do what you need to do. So if we press play now, we should be able to see, if we go out here, that the game world that we're going to eventually play in is starting to actually take shape. We can see the trees there. Starting to look quite nicely. So obviously if you have colliders on the trees itself, which the ones on the website that you can download do, they will already be in there so you can't actually walk through them. So environmental design is something which takes a long time, but it's not something that's, well, it is easy to teach because you only really need to know the basics of environmental design. The rest is up to you and how you make all your placements within the environment itself. So all I would advise to you is maybe find some textures, maybe some grass, some more rocks if you don't want to use these, and just work around with them and see what you can do and build up a terrain which you're quite happy with. Next episode, we're going to look at more environmental design like wind zones. We'll also look at a main menu and a credits scene. So we're going to start flipping between scenes quite a bit. Main menu is obviously something a lot of people ask for, how it's actually done, and it is fairly simple depending on what type of game you're working with. So guys, until that next episode, thank you very much for watching.